So I made a video last month about Eurovision 2021 and why I thought it was so great. It was a welcome return to normality after a year of insularity, a cathartic big event to reopen Europe after COVID. Great staging, great production, great songs, and an even better winner. But Eurovision 2022 took place in a slightly different Europe. We don't talk as much about COVID, doesn't dominate the news cycle. What does is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It was being hosted by Italy, a country with a history of slightly chaotic hostings of Eurovision. We had broken kinetic suns and national drama and the removal of one of the contestants. And it was certainly an interesting beginning. And where it went and what happened was also quite interesting.
So let's start with what was happening in Eurovision 22 politically. We're not going to have a boring conversation about whether Eurovision is political or not. I think it is. But I'm going to save my explanation of why for another video. Suffice to say, for the moment, that Eurovision is not political for those reasons that you think it is. It just so happens that Europe has politics, Eurovision happens in Europe, so Eurovision gets politics. It just reflects what's happening in Europe. Every year you see this manifest itself in stuff like voting and controversies and who gets booed, who doesn't get booed. But this year was obviously rather special. Now, before we get to the big event, of which of course I have thoughts, I just want to highlight a couple of other pieces of sort of the politics that might have gone a bit unnoticed. So on the kind of grander side, you had the confirmation actually of rumours about Macron and the French state putting pressure on France's delegation in 2021 to investigate Måneskin over apparently taking cocaine. Now, this is confirmed by the French commentator for Eurovision, who said that France's European minister also wanted her to investigate that. Now, the actual EBU said that was nonsense, but it does show how some leaders like to use Eurovision for soft power politics and how big a Eurovision win can be to people. I mean, it was big for the Balkan states in the early 2000s. It was big for Ukraine in 2004. You had Lukashenko coming up and giving the winner the prize. It was big for General Franco, the dictator back in Spain's dictatorial days, where he intervened in the national selection to remove a Catalan song and bring in a Spanish entry. And there is this political aspect to Eurovision. This is the most obvious and loud expression of Eurovision's politics, is when people actively engage in messing up the results. But on the more internal level, you have ways in which Eurovision acts and broadcasters speak to and are spoken to by Europe and by their people. You have lots of controversy that comes out of it, positive and negative. You have, for example, Andrea from North Macedonia being attacked by people on the internet in North Macedonia for throwing and disrespecting the flag. People felt disrespected by this artist. You have other more positive things, like Ranella, whose video made reference to conservation efforts for a certain area of Albania, who spoke to Albanian mythology, and whose staging talked as well to the LGBTQ community in Albania. Obviously, the most remarkable bit of national conversation that happened via Eurovision was Moldova and their song, which talked about a train between Chisinau and Bucharest and about how both countries are more or less the same. Now, this is very remarkable. Obviously, it's everyone's favourite song, but it's a remarkable song because of what it says about Moldova in this moment. Moldova is a country that is constantly looking from east to west, depending on culture and politics and the world around it. And there's a tendency, when they look westwards, to send Zdrobsi to Eurovision. They've obviously been the only people to progress from the semi-finals 3 times themselves, but they are the face of a westernised Moldova. And you could see that. They're talking to a country that's already in the EU and saying, we are one country, we are the same people. When they were pictured with the Moldovan president, herself elected off the back of a pro-European drive, there's loads of European Commission flags in the background to kind of bring in the point that we are a European country. But perhaps almost more importantly is how this entry brought into clear focus the massive hole that Russia have left in this competition. Now, that hole was filled by Ukraine. And this is the event. This is the big thing of Eurovision. It's the win by Ukraine, by Kalish Orchestra, as a result, you could definitely argue, of the invasion of their country by Russia. So it catapulted Ukraine to win, and it felt a very correct win. Many people have written about how good it was, how bad it was, how powerful it was, how it made them sad that Eurovision was political. Lots of different takes. And there's definitely an extent to which there's a certain agreement that the best song, or, the best bit of music didn't win Eurovision this year. The most sympathetic song won. However, this is my point of view. In Eurovision, it's not actually the best song that wins every year. It's the most impressive 3 minutes. And this year, Ukraine had that. Now, when I talk about a most impressive 3 minutes, there are two sides to what makes a good Eurovision song. Songs that do well with the jury and songs that do well with the public. A song that does well with the jury has to be well staged, well sung, and be a good song. A song that connects well and does well with the public has to be impressive. It can be a great song, it can be a great moment, like Måneskin last year. Those 3 minutes felt like the defining moment of that competition. Or it could be like Ukraine, who defined their moment by connecting with and being impressive to people in Europe. Because there's no such thing as an objectively good song. I have friends who hate all the good songs and love all the bad ones. And I also love songs that people hate. And this year, Ukraine escaped an actual war that they had been fighting in. They left their family and friends. They got up on a stage and produced a flawless, professional, quality performance, singing a very good song with very good staging. It was impressive, and most importantly, it touched the hearts of Europeans and made for a very effective and enjoyable 3 minutes. The song made no reference to the war, but it stood defiantly as a pop rap song, being normal and fun despite the world. Indeed, if the best Eurovision winners are postcards from a moment, Kalush Orchestra really couldn't have given us a better postcard. It felt extra special. Isn't that the point of Eurovision? To be special? Now, there have been other songs that have been politicised like that. 2016 in Ukraine, when they won, I feel that was also a powerful moment for lots of people in Europe to watch Jamila sit down on her knees and cry out in pain. There have been worse songs that have won. I don't know. It's a great Eurovision winner, and it made sense that it won. And it made sense in terms of Eurovision because it was impressive. It touched people. It mattered. Now, there have been other songs that have mattered more. For example, Bosnia in 1993, where the contestants, again, from a war zone, had to actually escape by cover of darkness, walk over mountains. People who were escaping with them that same night were shot. And they made it to Eurovision and sang and didn't do very well. And that's maybe because in 1993, Europe was less keen on taking a very strong stance on the Balkan conflict. People felt a bit awkward about it, so people weren't touched in the same way because they didn't have the same connotations that Ukraine does now. In the current world, Ukraine is the state we all respect and admire. And the Ukrainian act was the one that we all respected and admired. For good or for bad, that's the truth of it. And that's how Eurovision got political this year. There's some of the small ways in which Eurovision got political.
Another thing that I think worth mentioning out here by Tower Bridge is how sad I thought this year's competition felt. Not because it was sad or it made people sad, but because of the song choices and what people were singing about. We had a lot more references to breakups, to mental health, to depression. A lot of men singing about exclusion and their own mental well-being. And that's really interesting in how it contrasts to 2021. In 2021, there was this vibrancy, this need to look forward into the future, forget the misery of the pandemic, to have a form of escape. And maybe now, after a year, all those emotions have had time to flourish and develop, and the toll that the pandemic took on our mental health is only finally really being felt. And I suppose that's interesting in terms of not just how Eurovision reflects Europe's politics, but how it reflects Europe's mood. We were maybe a bit sadder this year, and that showed through the competition. Now look at songs that did well. Ukraine's winner of Stefania, which is about motherhood, and is felt quite deeply by Ukrainians who feel this loss of homeland and feel this sort of loss of self during the war. You know, maybe Moldova was quite positive and neutral emotionally because it was so political. But even songs like Spaceman, Hold Me Closer, these big, powerful songs about emotion, potentially show that this year we have a more introspective Europe. There we go. That is my rundown, my summary of Eurovision 2022, its dramas and its emotion. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope to be releasing videos once a month about Eurovision and Europe more generally. I'm still finding my feet and working out my style with all these things, so be patient. But yeah, see you next month and ciao.